it, dude. Yeah! Good dude. Right on, so we're gonna go over some Meadows rows here. It's John Meadows, the bodybuilder that kind of made these things famous. And basically what we're looking at is a unilateral row coming off of a landmine. And anytime the landmine setup is what we're using, it's one of my favorite things. Like the arc of using a landmine kind of makes the bar travel in a very different plane than you're going to be getting if you have a dumbbell in which you have to pull straight up and down. As you raise this thing off, it's going to kind of pull away from you. And there's a huge benefit in doing this row variation, in that one of the biggest faults you see when people are doing rows, whether it's unilateral rows, if they're doing bent rows, is getting their elbows too far outside. And as they bend over, this elbow up here, they're bringing the bar up to their chest, and they're not really thinking about how the lat actually works in the pulling motion. And from here, we should be able to pull straight in. And you'll notice the elbows come back, and that when the elbows come back, it brings our hands and what's going to bring the bar into our waist. So I love doing these because as the bar comes off the landmine, it automatically takes that line into our hip. Yes, you could bring it up towards your chest, but if you just let the landmine do its job and kind of control the bar path, it ends up naturally just coming straight in. I love doing these things with high reps. I mean, it's back training. You got a big back. You're gonna have to lift a lot of weights for a long time. What do you when you see people doing unilateral rows, or just kind of like, I know you haven't done any of these specifically yet, but what are you looking for in that rowing, any rowing variation as far as bar path, elbow?
Well, you know, when you do a movement, all you have to do is think about, you know, if the lats is what's doing this movement, you think, well, what does the lats do? And you're exactly right. They do extension, lateral extension, horizontal extension. And so by doing it, like you said, to here, you're doing both. Now, if you start to get it high, that's not necessarily what it does. That's really, you just, you know, activated shoulders. But by doing this, because it's really the lats only moves the upper arm. By doing it low, like you're saying, is all lats. And so, yeah, it's brilliant. I never really thought about it until you just explained it, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I also, for these, because grip strength is going to be the limiting factor and how much weight you're able to move, get yourself a set of straps. I mean, these things are lifesavers, especially when you're just trying to be jacked and you're not performing on stages and doing things. Holding the collar of the bar is going to be really tough. So if you can get a thumb over the end of the collar, you're going to be setting the strap up in here. Feet are going to be under your hips, driving your knees out, activate your glutes, and then just pulling that into your hip.
I'm actually excited to do this. That looks awesome. I have to. I'm excited to actually do this one. Like Dorian Yates.
Right?
You may know who that is. So I used to love that. Sorry.
Yeah, another thing when we think about kind of like the bar path, it's really easy after you finish the movement to kind of like rush getting down to the bottom. And it's not necessarily even a tempo, but maybe just like a mentality that I take into doing any of these row variations in which I'm actually placing the bar in the exact position at the bottom that I want it. So instead of just letting it drop and letting the landmine control where I'm going, I'm working with the landmine, but I'm like visualizing exactly where I want the weight to go, putting it in the exact position, and that just keeps tension on the bar and on the musculature throughout the entire range of motion and while you're doing all the reps. If you feel yourself kind of like dropping the weight and then throwing it back up, pretty much losing all the tension on the muscle, and you're kind of just throwing weight around versus actually getting the hypertrophy and contraction that you're looking for.
Let's go now. See that? Why was it so sore?
I love those. Feel like I can do those all day long.
I'm gonna do my weak side first. That left side is so weak when I broke my neck.
Yeah.
I need to do more unilateral work.
This being kind of the first time that you've done these, do you feel how the bar in the landmine, like it forces almost that like extra inch or two, getting it into your hips?
This is so smooth too.
Yeah, I love when pretty much anything on this, instead of worrying, because the limiting factor in any of this is going to be grip strength. Whether you're doing something where you're in a pressing motion, you still have to get it up.
Yeah.
So it gives you the ability to just use the implement as much as possible to hit the musculature that you need to be hitting and want to be hitting, versus worrying about how much weight's on there and just getting in a really good flow with the barbell. Whew.
I'll do one more.
Last one.
We'll let that dude come in.
Yeah.
I've got a massive pump.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Right on. So these are Meadows Rows. I love putting these in, kind of some massive hypertrophy thing, anywhere from 8 to 15. Man, if you even wanted to go higher, I don't know why you would, but keep it in the 8 to 15. There's really no reason to not go as heavy as you can. As long as you got some straps, can hold on to the bar. Just make sure you're kind of following that quad up and getting the head or the collar of the barbell into your hip instead of pulling high, internally rotating that shoulder and having it out, flare out wide. This is one of my favorite all time. Go and get a big bent row and come and follow it up with some unilateral stuff.
I always say that the one big point I'd like to make is, like, with all rows, you'll see a lot of people will row and then they will internally rotate Their back will flex. They're trying to get more range of motion. But you didn't really. All you did was use your spine to flex. So not really was the range of motion coming from the lats working, but you're just flexing. So keep the spine neutral. Keep the scapula tucked, retracted in and tucked down, suppressed.
There it is. See you guys next week.